Hi everybody, welcome back. I've got two people joining me today, Simon, Scott Nelson and Marco Alfano-Rogers, two of our sales directors here at Air. Marco, welcome on board. First time joining in one of these chats, so
thank you.
Good to have you here. So today we're going to be talking about the cost per lead or cost per appointment model. So when we look at outsourced sales as a service, obviously there are many different structures in which you can bill or charge, and we see some great ones, we see some frustrating ones, and certainly I've had a lot of conversations recently about the frustrations around cost per lead, cost per appointment. I'm keen to get your thoughts on why that isn't the right model to go down, and if you're thinking about outsourcing sales, why you should look to avoid that model. Simon, what are your first initial thoughts on that?
I think it's attractive when you see the price and you see it as less investment when you're looking around. I think that's the wrong approach to have personally, because the emphasis is on the wrong result. The emphasis is on leads and not the ROI back for the client. So if you're looking long term, or you want to be part of a partnership that's going to make you money over time, you need to be looking at the ROI, and for that, companies need to have invested already in their infrastructure. They need to have had money up front for their staff, for their training, for their onboarding, for their L&D, for everything else, and that costs money, that costs investment, and that's what you're paying for with your hourly rate, and that's what's going to ensure that you're going to get the best ROI back.
And surely, Marco, just to get your thoughts on it, doesn't this simply come down to the argument of quality and quantity, and those two things, which one is more important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cost per lead model puts too much emphasis on the end goal, which is the appointment, as opposed to, as Simon said, the resource. Certainly from experience, what I've found is someone always loses out with the cost per lead model. So 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the client that loses out, because they end up paying more in terms of the cost per lead as opposed to the hourly rate, because we've done so well for so many of our clients.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because on the surface of things, it makes sense. I only pay if you achieve this outcome. Exactly. So it fits in line with the old recruitment model, if you sell my house model around a state agency. But it's a very different thing, and I think that I see that there has been two frustrations. One is Simon's point. If you work with an outsourced sales business, you want them focused on getting you a return, not on getting you a set number of leads, because I can generate you any kind of lead, but that doesn't mean it's going to convert into a sale. No. And if I'm able to take the time to focus on quality of conversation, quality of engagement, maybe having 2 or 3 conversations with that person before handing that lead over to your sales team, then the chances of closing that and getting a return are much higher. But if I'm on a cost per lead basis, I can't do that. I've got to get you as many leads as quickly as possible. So I think that's one of the things that limits it as a model. And back to your second point then, Marco, somebody always wins and someone always loses. So either the client is paying too much or the agency isn't getting paid enough. And actually, that's the worst of those, because as an agency, if you're not earning what you need to earn to pay the bills, then of course you can't continue to work on that campaign. And so many times I've heard people say, we're guaranteed this number of leads, then they're not able to achieve that, and because they're not getting paid, they end up stopping working, and now you're back in a position where you haven't actually got an agency working for you and delivering you leads, and you're better having 2 or 3 good quality ones than you are having none, because they can't achieve them and it's not interesting. So in terms of that, how we get people over that hurdle to see the advantages of working on a fixed resource model. So playing devil's advocate, my view would be, well, I'm not guaranteed anything. What would you say in that scenario, Simon?
Well, you're not guaranteed. You can't guarantee anything, can you? Because essentially we're selling what we are promising, but we build a hugely analytical business, as much as we can draw on different verticals that we've been in, whether it be energy, tech, SaaS, and we can say, well, into these industries we get these analytics. We guarantee that we'll roughly guarantee that we'll guarantee that we'll 15 and 20 calls an hour, depending on the conversation length or the how big the elements of conversation is and consultancy. And in these verticals, we've had this in the past. I suppose that's what you can guarantee. I think with the cost per lead, I've heard that they don't, in some cases, don't even have a strategy meeting. Don't even actually say, well, what does a good look like? I think that's what's essential in any, because we could pass 20 leads over, but we've no idea if they meet any criteria, or whether we're sending people around the country on a wild goose chase. So yeah, I think we can guarantee professionalism, we can guarantee that we can do a strategy meeting, guarantee that we'll know what good is and assume their identity, their tone of voice to the best of their ability. And we have that investment in the training up front, so the campaign has longevity, rather than just being told to get on the phones as quickly as possible, because we're only being paid per lead. So we want to start the clock running as soon as possible and get on there and sort of learn as you progress into into the campaign, where of course we do a lot of our learning before.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, because it does take time to get this working at the level it needs to. We know the ramp-up time for a successful outsourced sales campaign can be months. So judging something from day one on the same price based on the cost per lead, when the success expectation in month one is different to what it would be in month 2 or month 3, doesn't allow for that organic learning. I think it's hard to develop a true working collaborative relationship with the client as well, isn't it?
I think it's about changing the mindset as well. You know, people buy into using us as a sales resource as opposed to just buying appointments for the sake of it. And I think it's changing that mindset that we are. You know, we're an outsourced sales function. You know, we replicate corporate identities. It's about it's about working in a partnership as opposed to simply just delivering appointments.
And I think to that point, when you talk about a resource, if you had an internal resource and you needed to change something, actually we need to target this industry, or we need to start changing the pitch. We're finding that this pitch is landing, this messaging in our face-to-face meetings is landing really well. I have the flexibility to change that, and using an organisation like ours on an hourly rate model, same thing. I can come to you and say, actually, Simon, Mark, I want you to change the way we're doing this. So the ability is there. On a cost per lead model, that's hard, because I'm saying, well, it's taking us this amount of time to get a lead using this strategy. If you're going to change the strategy or the target market, we've got to renegotiate the contract every single time, or the answer is no, we can't change it. So you end up with a set and forget scenario. You set it like this, it either works or it doesn't. Inevitably it doesn't, more often than it does, right? And that's again about flexibility of resource and the ability to adapt to an ever-changing market, surely.
Yeah, I mean, you could go into different industries, can't you? Because even if you look at an estate agency, for example, you go, oh, I want the cheapest fee. You know, they're going to do it for 500 quid or 0.5%. You think, great, we'll go with them. Well, hang on a second, how do you know they're going to get you the best price? Wouldn't you rather pay 1.5–2% of 20 grand more that you're going to get through the expertise and the knowledge and the contact book that they've already built up through their years of being in the business?
But is that overpromise thing? So we would rather say, we don't know what we're going to be able to achieve for you. Here are some educated guesses that help us to understand the landscape of what's coming and what we should expect, but we don't know because we haven't done it yet. A typical cost per lead agency might say, I'll be able to get you this number per week.
Absolutely.
And that's that overpromise thing, because those are words. Does that help them win the account, and then they just try to deal with the rubbish that comes next? And is that the kind of supplier you want to engage with, or do you want somebody who's going to be upfront and honest with you? Keen to get your thoughts on that sort of initial engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to the strategy session, doesn't it? You know, that initial strategy piece is so important, because that is defining, that's defining where we go with the campaign. And I don't know what I was going to say.
That's okay.
But if you're a member, if you're a member of staff and you want to work for someone, wouldn't you want to go and work for a company that has the investment in the training and the infrastructure and everything else, that is getting the money in to educate and get trainers in internally and externally? So if you're the best member of staff, you'd want to go to that company. That's hopefully why we have such a high retention rate of staff here.
Look, I think you're right. So it comes down to honesty and transparency in that initial conversation and the type of partner you want to choose. Flexibility, so having the ability to change direction, to pivot on your strategy, change your messaging, changing the target market. Comes down to a focus on quality and knowing what you're going to get. The other thing is, one thing that we can guarantee with a sales resource is the amount of time focused on a campaign. So we don't know what's going to happen in that time. We do our best to deliver the best results that we can, and it's in our interest to deliver good results, because then a client continues with us. But we can guarantee that time is going to be there. With a cost per lead model, I might say I charge you £500 a lead or £200 a lead, but I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to be able to deliver a number of leads, or indeed even put some time into that campaign, because if someone's going to pay me more to get a lead, hey, guess what? I'm going over there. Which again brings you back to the recruitment model, the estate agency model, where I might have 10 houses to sell. Which one am I working hardest on? The one that pays the most. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's
and even going back towards the data you're going to get, do you get easier data? Do you just get the ones where you're likely to get through? You're likely to get through quicker, so you're going to get more leads, but actually they're not the decision makers, and then they have to go through 4 levels of sign-off. Or do you take your time and concentrate your efforts into the bigger companies where actually the ticket value is bigger, and it's going to be far more worth to the client? And I think that's what it is. The cost per lead, we look, the agency will look better because they're getting so many leads through. I think with ours, the client benefits more because our focus is on them. We know very well that we pay a great deal of our commission once we get the client retained past that initial period, once we get them past that initial period, we know we've done a lot of things well.
Yeah.
From consultation, from communication to ROI to everything else. There's a big group of things that we've done well, and that's why they stay with us. And I think that's what you lose in a cost per lead.
Yeah. Okay. So look, we've hung our hat on something today, which is great. So if you're looking for an outsourced sales agency, be really serious about what kind of model you want to be working with. Certainly we've talked about some of the pitfalls of both models there, but we would highly recommend looking at a fixed resource at an hourly rate or a daily rate model, but making sure that you're choosing the right supplier. And we can talk about that in another conversation.
We could talk about that all day long.
So we could. Gents, thanks for your input today. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you.